I wasted 20 years of my life losing the same battle every single night, and I didn't even know I was fighting. I'd climb into bed exhausted, mind racing with everything I hadn't finished, everyone I'd disappointed, all the ways I'd fallen short. I thought this was just what minds did at bedtime, torture you a little before granting sleep. What I didn't realize was that I was sculpting my future self in those moments, carving anxiety and inadequacy deeper into my character with every worried thought. My evening mind was destroying what my morning mind tried to build. The day I discovered what to do differently, such a small thing, such a strange little practice, everything started to shift. Not overnight, but unmistakably. I'm 79 now, and I wish I'd known this at 29. But you can know it tonight. And that's why I'm here, talking to you like this. Because what I'm about to share with you is something that changed the entire trajectory of my life, and I don't say that lightly. I'm not prone to exaggeration. I'm a printer by trade, a scientist by curiosity, and an observer of human nature by necessity. And in all my years of watching people, including myself, struggle and strive, and try so hard to become better, I've noticed something that almost nobody talks about. We're all exhausting ourselves trying to change during the day. When we're awake and alert and full of willpower, we set our intentions every morning. We fight our worst habits. We push ourselves to be kinder, more patient, more disciplined, more successful. And then we go to bed feeling like we failed again, like we're not enough. Like maybe we'll never be the person we're trying so hard to become. But here's what I need you to understand. And I mean really understand, not just hear. The reason nothing sticks, the reason you keep slipping back into old patterns, the reason change feels so hard, it's not because you're weak or broken, or lacking in some fundamental way. It's because you're ignoring the only window when change actually installs itself. Those final moments before consciousness fades. Those 5 minutes before sleep, when your mind is soft and open and vulnerable. Most people use this sacred time to rehearse anxiety, to replay arguments, to scroll through glowing rectangles, or to simply collapse into unconsciousness like a soldier falling where he stood. And I understand it. God knows I understand it. After a long day, you're tired. Your mind is tired. You just want it all to stop. But what if I told you that those moments, those exact moments when you feel most powerless, are actually when you have the most power? Not the kind of power that comes from striving or forcing or white-knuckling your way through life. A different kind. A deeper kind. The kind of power that works while you sleep, that reshapes you in the dark, that makes change feel effortless because it's happening at a level beneath your conscious awareness. This video is going to reveal that power to you. I'm going to show you the single most overlooked leverage point in your entire day, the last 5 minutes before sleep, and teach you how to use it to literally reprogram your automatic self. Not through willpower, because willpower is exhausting, and it runs out. Not through discipline, because discipline is just another form of fighting yourself. But through a specific mental technology that I refined over 5 decades of self-experimentation. A technology so simple that you'll be tempted to dismiss it. So gentle that you'll wonder if it's actually doing anything, but so powerful that it will change who you are at your foundation. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You're thinking, Ben, I've heard all this before. Positive thinking, manifestation, affirmations, all that stuff. And maybe it worked for you, but it doesn't work for me. I've tried, and you're right to be skeptical. Because most of what passes for self-help these days is just dressed-up wishful thinking. It's people telling you to repeat nice phrases to yourself and expect miracles. It's shallow. It's disconnected from how the mind actually works. And worst of all, when it doesn't work, you blame yourself for not believing hard enough. What I'm sharing with you is different. This isn't about believing. It's about understanding. Understanding the architecture of your sleeping mind. Understanding why your last thoughts before sleep have a gravitational pull on your future. Understanding the difference between fantasy that makes you feel good for a moment and imagination that actually rebuilds your character. I'm going to show you the mechanics of this, the neurology of it, the philosophy behind it, and most importantly, the practice, the simple thing you can do tonight that will begin to shift everything. And here's the promise I'm making to you. By the end of this conversation, you'll understand why your identity isn't built by what you do when you're trying hard, but by what you do when you're barely conscious. When your critical mind is offline, and your deeper self is listening. The bedtime mind is like wet clay. The daytime mind is like fired pottery. One can be reshaped, one cannot. We've been taught to focus all our change efforts on the pottery, and then we wonder why we keep cracking. So, let me tell you what you're going to walk away with. You're going to understand how the sleeping mind works, why it's different from the waking mind, and why those differences matter enormously for who you're becoming. You're going to learn a simple but profound practice that I've used to reshape my character, my relationships, my fortune, and my peace. Not through force, through direction. Gentle, consistent, nightly direction. And you're going to see why this single practice has more power than 100 morning affirmations, more impact than any amount of daytime striving. This isn't about perfection. I need to be clear about that right now. This is about direction. You're not trying to become perfect by next week. You're trying to gently steer your unconscious mind toward what you want to become, rather than letting it drift toward what you fear. And the beautiful part? It only takes 5 minutes. 5 minutes before sleep. That's it. 5 minutes that most people throw away every single night, letting their minds run wild with worry, or numbing themselves with distractions until unconsciousness takes them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. Let me tell you how I discovered this. Because I didn't find it in a book. I didn't learn it from some wise teacher. I stumbled onto it through my own failures, through paying attention to my own patterns, and through a series of realizations that built on each other over many years. And the first realization came from the most unlikely place, my printing press. You see, I spent most of my working life around printing presses, and if you've never seen one, let me paint you a picture. You take a piece of metal, type these little letters made of lead, and you arrange them into words, into sentences, into pages. Then you ink them. Then you press the paper against them with enormous pressure. And when you pull the paper away, the ink has transferred. The words are now on the paper. Permanent. Readable. Real. And I must have done this 10,000 times. 20,000 times. So many times that it became automatic. My hands knew the motions. My eyes knew when the pressure was right. My mind could wander while my body did the work. And one evening, I remember this so clearly, I was finishing up a late printing job. It was maybe 9 or 10 at night. I was tired. My brother and I had been arguing about the business earlier that day, and I was still angry about it. Angry at something he'd said. Angry at how he'd dismissed my ideas. Angry in that way where you replay the conversation in your mind over and over, thinking of better things you should have said. And as I was standing there, pressing the ink onto paper, watching the words appear, I had this sudden thought. My mind is doing the same thing right now. I'm taking my anger, this feeling, this story about what happened, and I'm pressing it onto my consciousness. Over and over, I'm printing it, making it permanent, making it part of me. And that thought stopped me cold. Because I realized I'd been doing this, not just that evening, but every evening. Whatever I was thinking about as I went to bed, whatever emotions I was feeling in those final moments before sleep, I was printing them. I was taking them from the surface of my mind and pressing them deep into my character. And I'd been doing it unconsciously, automatically, the same way my hands moved around the printing press without me even thinking about it. That night, I went to bed still angry at my brother, and I noticed something. I noticed that, as I was falling asleep, my mind kept returning to the argument, kept replaying it, kept making him wrong and me right. And I remember thinking, with this new awareness, I'm printing this right now. I'm taking this anger and I'm stamping it into myself while I sleep. And sure enough, the next morning, I woke up still feeling antagonistic toward him. Not because he'd done anything new, not because the argument mattered that much, but because I'd spent the night printing that feeling into my system. And this kept happening. For weeks. Every time I'd see him, even when he was being perfectly reasonable, even when he was trying to be kind, I'd feel this knee-jerk irritation, this guardedness, this assumption that he was going to dismiss me or belittle me. And I realized. I had printed the anger so many times in my sleep that it had become my default setting toward him. My automatic response. The person I became around him was without even trying. That scared me. Because if I could accidentally print destructive patterns into myself night after night without realizing it, what else was I printing? What other thoughts? What other feelings? What other stories were I rehearsing in those vulnerable moments before sleep? And more importantly, if I could accidentally print the wrong things, could I deliberately print the right things? That question changed everything. It was the beginning of an experiment that would last the rest of my life. an experiment with myself as the subject. And what I discovered over the years through trial and error, through careful observation, through successes and failures, was that yes, you can. You can absolutely use those pre-sleep moments to reshape yourself. But not in the way most people think. Not through affirmations or positive thinking or trying to convince yourself of things you don't believe. Through something subtler. Something that works with your mind's natural architecture instead of fighting against it. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Let me tell you about the second discovery. Because understanding the printing press metaphor was just the beginning. I needed to understand why. Why did the pre-sleep mind have this power? Why not the waking mind? Why not the middle of the day, when I was alert and focused, and capable of clear thinking? That's where the next piece of the puzzle came in, and it came from a completely different direction. You might have heard of my electricity experiments, the kite and the key and all that. Most people think that was just about proving that lightning was electrical. And it was, but it was also about something deeper. I was fascinated by electricity because it was invisible, but powerful. You couldn't see it, but you could see its effects. And I wanted to understand the rules it followed, the principles, the laws. And what I discovered, through many experiments, some of them quite dangerous, some of them quite humbling, was this. Electricity follows the path of least resistance. It doesn't fight. It doesn't force. It simply flows wherever it can flow most easily. If you give it a conductor, it takes that path. If you give it an insulator, it stops. It's not making a choice. It's following its nature. And one day I had this thought. What if consciousness works the same way? What if the thoughts and feelings we want to instill in ourselves are like electricity, and our mind has different levels of resistance at different times? During the day, when we're awake and alert, our resistance is maximum. We have defenses, we have habits, we have an identity we're protecting, we have a fear of change. All of that creates resistance. So when we try to change during the day, when we try to be more patient or more disciplined or more confident, we're basically trying to force electricity through an insulator. It's possible, but it takes enormous energy. It's exhausting. And the moment we stop applying that energy, we snap back to our default patterns. But what about when we're falling asleep? What's happening to our resistance then? And that's when I started paying very close attention to that twilight state. That drowsy, half-conscious time right before sleep takes you completely. And I noticed something remarkable. The resistance drops to almost nothing. Your defenses are down. Your habits are quiet. Your identity is loose. You're not trying to be anybody. You're not protecting anything. You're just open, vulnerable, malleable. And I thought, this is it. This is the path of least resistance. If I want to change something about myself, this is when to do it. Not through force, not through effort, but simply by directing my attention in this state when my mind is naturally open to new patterns. It's like the difference between trying to carve a groove in stone versus carving a groove in soft earth. Same motion, completely different results. So I decided to test this. I chose one quality that I wanted to develop in myself: patience. I was not a naturally patient person. I was quick-tempered, easily frustrated, and always in a hurry. And it was causing problems in my relationships, in my work, in my own inner peace. I'd tried to be more patient many times. I'd remind myself during the day. I'd catch myself getting frustrated and tell myself to calm down. Sometimes it worked for an hour or two, but then I'd slip right back into my old patterns. The change never stuck. But now I tried something different. Every night before sleep, in those final drowsy minutes, I would imagine myself as already patient, not trying to be patient, not working on patience, but already having it as my nature. I'd imagine situations that would normally frustrate me, someone talking slowly, a project taking longer than expected, a mistake that needed fixing, and I'd imagine myself responding with calm, with ease, with genuine, unforced patience. And I wouldn't think about it too much. I wouldn't analyze it. I'd just feel it. Feel what it would be like in my body to be that person. Feel the relaxation in my shoulders. Feel the steadiness in my breath. Feel the quiet confidence of someone who knows that rushing doesn't help, that frustration doesn't solve anything, that everything happens in its own time. And here's what I did not do. I did not try to convince myself I was patient when I clearly wasn't. I did not repeat phrases like, "I am patient. I am patient." That would have felt fake, and my mind would have rejected it. Instead, I just imagined it. The same way you might imagine what it would be like to live in a different house or visit a different country. You're not lying to yourself. You're just exploring a possibility in your imagination. And I did this every night. 5 minutes. Sometimes less. Sometimes I'd fall asleep in the middle of it, and that was fine. I wasn't trying to be perfect about it. I was just gently, consistently pointing my mind in this direction right before sleep took me. After about a week, I didn't notice any difference. I was still getting frustrated at the same things, still impatient, still quick to irritation. And I remember thinking, well, maybe this doesn't work. Maybe I was wrong about all of this. But I kept doing it anyway, because it wasn't hard. It was actually kind of pleasant. 5 minutes of imagining myself as calm and patient before sleep, that was better than 5 minutes of worrying about the next day, which is what I'd been doing before. And then something happened. About 3 weeks in, my wife commented. She said, "You seem different lately." I asked her what she meant. She said, "I don't know. Calmer. Less rushed. The other day when the ink spilled at the shop, you just laughed about it. The old you would have been furious." And I realized she was right. Something had changed. But here's the strange part. I hadn't been trying to be calmer during the day. I hadn't been catching myself and forcing patience in the moment. The change had happened behind the scenes, in the sleep factory, because I'd been giving it the right blueprint every night. It was like I'd been building a new version of myself in the dark, and one day I woke up and found that new version was just there. It was me. It was natural. That's when I knew this worked. That's when I knew I'd found something real. Not positive thinking, not willpower, but a genuine method for reshaping the automatic self. The person you are when you're not thinking about it. The person you default to when you're tired or stressed or caught off guard. That's the person who matters. That's the person who lives your life. And that person is built at night, in the dark, in those final moments before consciousness dissolves. Now, let me tell you about the third piece of the puzzle, because this is where I learned what not to do. Because my first instinct, once I discovered this power, was to use it to fix everything about myself all at once. I started doing an evening review before bed, which sounds like a good idea, right? Review your day. Look at what went well and what went poorly. Learn from your mistakes. Resolve to do better tomorrow. So that's what I did. Every night, I would lie in bed and mentally review my day, noting all the places where I'd fallen short, where I'd been impatient, even though I was working on patience, where I'd been sharp with someone when I should have been kind, where I'd procrastinated when I should have been productive, where I'd been selfish when I should have been generous. And I would feel the weight of these failures, feel the disappointment in myself, and then I would resolve with great determination to do better tomorrow. And the result? I felt worse. I slept poorly. My dreams were anxious and full of conflict, and the next day, I didn't do better. In fact, I often did worse, because I was carrying this heavy feeling of inadequacy from the night before. And worst of all, I wasn't actually changing. I was just rehearsing my failures over and over, printing them deeper into my character every night. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to realize what I was doing wrong. I was using the printing press in reverse. I was taking my worst moments, my mistakes, my shortcomings, and I was stamping them into my sleeping mind. I was telling my unconscious self every night, this is who you are. This is your nature. You're impatient. You're unkind. You're lazy. You're selfish. And my unconscious self was listening. It was taking that message and building a person around it. The person I said I was. So I changed the practice. Instead of reviewing what went wrong, I started reviewing who I wanted to be. And here's the subtle but crucial shift. I started looking for any moment, however small, where that person had shown up in my day, even for a second, even in potential. Let me give you an example. Let's say I wanted to become more generous. My old practice would have been to note all the times I was stingy or selfish during the day, feel bad about it, and resolve to be better. My new practice was this. Before sleep, I would ask where did generosity show up today? Even a little bit? And at first, my mind would say, nowhere. You were selfish all day. But I'd push a little deeper. Did I hold a door for someone? Did I listen patiently when someone needed to talk? Did I have a generous thought, even if I didn't act on it? Did I feel the impulse to help even if circumstances prevented me? And I'd always find something. Always. Because every human being has every quality inside them. We're not fundamentally one thing. We're a collection of possibilities, and we're constantly choosing which ones to grow and which ones to starve. So I'd find that one moment of generosity, maybe I'd given a sincere compliment to someone, or I'd shared some knowledge freely, or I'd simply smiled at a stranger, and I would replay it in my mind. Do not analyze it. Do not congratulate myself. Just replay it. Feel it. Remember what it felt like in my body to be generous in that moment. And then I would amplify it. I would imagine being that generous person more often. I would imagine it becoming my nature, not something I had to force. And this practice felt completely different. Instead of going to bed heavy with failure, I went to bed feeling hopeful, encouraged, like I was already becoming who I wanted to be, and I just needed to keep watering that seed. And the changes that came from this approach were much deeper and more lasting than anything that came from beating myself up at night. What I was doing, though I didn't have this language for it at the time, was training my sleeping mind to notice and amplify the person I wanted to become. Instead of obsessing over the person I was trying to escape, I was using selective attention, not lying to myself, not ignoring my flaws, but choosing what seed to water while I slept. Because here's something most people don't understand about the sleeping mind. It doesn't know the difference between what you're remembering and what you're imagining. It doesn't distinguish between what happened and what you vividly picture happening. As far as your unconscious is concerned, if you're replaying a memory of being generous or imagining being generous with rich sensory detail, both are equally real. Both get encoded the same way. Both shape who you're becoming. This is why replaying your failures at night is so destructive. You're not learning from them. You're rehearsing them. You're literally practicing failure in your mind over and over. And then you wonder why those patterns keep showing up in your waking life. You've been drilling them into yourself 8 hours a night. But when you flip it around, when you use that same power to rehearse your best self, your emerging self, the person you're becoming, you start to build momentum in the other direction. You start to notice more moments during the day where that person shows up because your sleeping mind has been trained to look for them. And the more you notice them, the more they grow. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. Now, you might be wondering, why does this work? What's actually happening in the brain when you do this? And while I didn't have fMRI machines in my day, I can tell you what I observed and what makes sense based on how the mind operates. When you're falling asleep, you enter a very specific brain state. It's called the hypnagogic state, though I didn't know that term back then. I just called it the twilight. It's that drowsy, dreamy time when you're not quite awake and not quite asleep. And in this state, something very interesting happens. Your critical mind, the part of you that questions and doubts and resists and protects it, clocks out early. It goes to sleep before the rest of you does. It's like a security guard who leaves their post 10 minutes before their shift ends. And in those 10 minutes, there's a window. Your deeper mind, the part that actually runs your life, that stores your habits and patterns and automatic responses, that part is still awake and listening. But the gatekeeper is gone. This is why the pre-sleep state is so powerful. You're not fighting your own resistance. You're not trying to convince a skeptical mind of anything. You're simply planting seeds in soil that's ready to receive them. And those seeds grow while you sleep. In the dark, in the mysterious process of memory, consolidation, and pattern reinforcement that happens every ht, whether you're aware of it or not. But here's where most people get it wrong, and this is crucial. The sleeping mind doesn't speak in words. It speaks in images and feelings, sensations, and sensory experiences. If you lie in bed and repeat verbal affirmations, I am confident, I am confident, I am confident, your critical mind hears that and says, no, you're not. Stop lying to yourself. And even if your critical mind is half asleep, the affirmation still doesn't land because it's abstract. It's just words. But if you imagine yourself in a specific situation, let's say giving a presentation at work, and you feel in your body what it's like to be confident in that moment, that's a completely different thing. You're not making a claim. You're having an experience. And the sleeping mind records experiences. It takes them seriously. It says, oh, this is what we're capable of. This is a possibility. Let me remember this. I discovered this not through any deliberate study, but just through noticing what worked and what didn't. I noticed I could barely remember complex thoughts in that drowsy state. My thinking would get fuzzy and vague, but I could feel things with unusual intensity. Emotions were sharper. Sensations were more vivid. Images were more real than reality sometimes. So I stopped trying to think myself into change, and I started trying to feel myself into it. Feel what it would be like to already be the person I was becoming. And that made all the difference. Now let me talk about something that confused me for a long time, and I see it confusing people even now. There's a fine line between productive imagination, the kind that actually builds new neural patterns and changes your character, and escapist fantasy. Fantasy is about getting away from your life. Imagine winning the lottery so you don't have to deal with your problems. Daydreaming about being famous so you can avoid doing the real work. Picturing some magical future where everything is easy and you're a completely different person without having to actually become that person. Fantasy is pleasant, but it's actually dangerous, because it satisfies your desire for change without producing any actual change. It's like eating empty calories. You feel full for a moment, but you're not getting any nutrition. And worse, chronic fantasy can actually keep you stuck, because you're getting just enough pleasure from imagining a better life that you never bother to build one. So how do you know if you're engaging in productive imagination or escapist fantasy? Here's the test I came up with. Ask yourself what you're imagining. Are you imagining doing something impressive? Or are you imagining being someone who naturally does that thing? Are you picturing the outcome? Or are you picturing the character? Let me give you a concrete example. When I wanted to improve my writing and build my printing business, my first instinct was to imagine success. I'd lie in bed and picture people praising my work. Picture my newspaper being the most widely read in the colonies. Picture myself as wealthy and respected, and influential. And you know what happened? Nothing. I'd wake up the next morning and still be the same person with the same mediocre writing and the same struggling business. Because I'd been imagining the prize, not the person who earns the prize. Then I shifted it. Instead of imagining being successful, I imagined being the kind of person who would naturally become successful. What traits would that person have? They'd be fascinated by language, obsessed with clarity, careful with details, patient with revision, genuinely interested in serving readers rather than impressing them, disciplined in their daily practice, humble enough to learn from criticism. So that's what I started imagining before sleep. Not the applause, not the money, but being that person. What would it feel like in my body to be genuinely fascinated by a sentence structure? What would it feel like to care deeply about getting a word exactly right? What would it feel like to read criticism of my work and feel curious rather than defensive? And here's what happened. I started showing up differently at the printing press. Not because I was trying to, but because I was becoming that person from the inside out. I'd catch myself being more meticulous with a layout, more patience with a difficult passage, more willing to throw out work that wasn't good enough. The changes were subtle at first, but they were real, and they accumulated. And eventually, the outcomes followed. Not because I'd visualized the outcomes, but because I'd become the kind of person who produces those outcomes naturally. This is the difference between fantasy and future building. Fantasy focuses on the destination. Future building focuses on the traveler. Fantasy asks, what do I want to have? Future building asks, who do I want to be? And the sleeping mind can only work with the second question. It can't give you things, but it can reshape your character, and character determines everything else. So the practice isn't, imagine yourself achieving your goals. The practice is, imagine already having the character traits that make those goals inevitable. Imagine being patient, and patience will handle the goal. Imagine being disciplined, and discipline will build what needs to be built. Imagine being generous, and generosity will attract what you need. You don't have to micromanage the outcomes. You just have to become the person. And here's the other crucial distinction. You're not trying to imagine being perfect. You're not trying to become some superhuman version of yourself who never fails or struggles or has bad days. You're just trying to grow specific qualities that you already have in seed form. Every human being has every quality. You have patience in you, even if you're generally impatient. You have courage in you, even if you're often afraid. You have wisdom in you, even if you often act foolishly. These aren't things you need to get from somewhere else. They're things you need to water. And that's exactly what the pre-sleep practice does. It waters seeds. You're not creating patience from nothing. You're finding the tiny seed of patience that already exists in you. Maybe you were patient for 30 seconds today. Maybe you felt the impulse toward patience even if you didn't act on it. and you're saying to your sleeping mind, this, grow this, more of this, let this become my nature. And your sleeping mind is incredibly good at this work, because it's not distracted by all the noise of daily life. It's not worried about what people think, or whether you're doing it right, or how long it's taking. It just takes the blueprint you give it and starts building, quietly, consistently, in the dark. Now let me talk about one more thing before we get into the actual practice, because this is where a lot of people get tripped up. There's a paradox at the heart of this work, and if you don't understand the paradox, you'll either push too hard and create resistance, or you'll be too passive and nothing will change. The paradox is this: you have to have a clear direction of who you want to become, but you have to hold that direction lightly. You have to care about the change, but not be desperate for it. You have to put in consistent effort, but it has to be effortless effort. You have to want something different, but you have to accept yourself exactly as you are right now. I know that sounds contradictory. How can you want to change and accept yourself at the same time? But this is the key to the whole thing. If you hate who you are now, if you're in a fight with yourself, if you're constantly pushing and forcing and trying to be different through sheer willpower, you create enormous internal resistance. And remember what I said about electricity. It takes the path of least resistance. If you're full of resistance, change can't flow through you. It bounces off. You exhaust yourself without getting anywhere. But if you can accept yourself as you are, all your flaws and failures and limitations, and simultaneously hold a vision of who you're becoming, that's when change becomes natural, easy, inevitable, because you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're just gently steering. Think of it like this. Imagine you're in a boat on a river. The river is your life, flowing in whatever direction it's flowing. Now, if you hate the direction and you start thrashing around, trying to fight the current, trying to force the boat to go backwards or sideways against the flow, you're going to exhaust yourself and probably capsize. But if you accept that the river is flowing, accept where you are, accept how you got here, and you simply dip your paddle in and make small, gentle adjustments to steer toward where you want to go, that works. That flows. That takes you somewhere new, without all the drama and struggle. That's what the pre-sleep practice is. It's steering, not forcing. It's gentle direction, not violent revolution. You're not trying to become a different person overnight. You're just aiming yourself in a direction and trusting that 5 minutes of steering every night, compounded over weeks and months and years, will take you somewhere completely different than where you'd end up if you just drifted. And this is why I can't stress enough. This practice must be gentle. If you lie down at night and try to force yourself to feel certain things or imagine certain things, if you're tense and effortful about it, you're defeating the whole purpose. The pre-sleep state only works because you're relaxed and open. The moment you try too hard, your resistance goes up and the window closes. So you have to approach it with a light touch, almost playfully, like you're just exploring a possibility, just trying something on to see how it feels. There's no pressure, no judgment, no right or wrong way to do it. You're just gently pointing your mind in a direction and then letting sleep take you. All right, so you understand the why. You understand the mechanism. You understand the theory. Now let me give you the how. Let me give you the specific practice that you can start doing tonight. And I'm going to break this down step by step because details matter. The structure matters. The sequence matters. Here's what you do. In the last 5 minutes before you expect to fall asleep, you go through a very specific sequence. Not 10 minutes, not 20 minutes, 5 minutes, that's all. If you do this for 5 minutes every night, that's 30 hours a year of deep subconscious reprogramming. That's enough. That's more than enough if you do it consistently. So here's the sequence. Minute 1. Physical settling. You lie down in bed, lights off, eyes closed, and you haven't tried to do anything yet. You have just arrived. You feel your body against the mattress. You feel the weight of your head on the pillow. You notice your breath, but you don't control it. You just let it be whatever it is. You relax any obvious tension, drop your shoulders, soften your jaw, let your hands rest. You're not trying to fall asleep yet. You're not trying to stay awake either. You're just present with your body, settling into stillness. This minute is about creating a foundation. You're telling your system, we're done now. The day is over. We can rest. Minute 2, the release. This is where you consciously let go of the day, not processing it, not analyzing it, not trying to solve anything, just releasing it. You might say to yourself, silently or out loud, the day is done, or I did what I could, or nothing more can be done tonight, or whatever phrase helps you genuinely let go. And you feel that letting go happens in your body. You feel the grip relaxing, the clinging stops. You're not carrying the day into sleep, you're setting it down. Some nights this will be easy. Some nights your mind will want to hold on. I'll want to replay that argument or plan tomorrow, or worry about something. That's fine. Just notice it. Don't fight it. Just gently, patiently, bring yourself back to the release. The day is done. I can let it go. And if your mind keeps racing, that's okay. You're not trying to force anything. You're just practicing the gesture of release. Even if it doesn't fully work tonight, the practice itself is valuable. Minute 3. The identity question. This is the heart of the practice. You ask yourself, who do I want to be becoming? And you pick one trait. Just one. Not 10. Not 5. 1. Some examples: patient, creative, brave, peaceful, curious, generous, confident, kind, focused, playful, free, strong, gentle, wise. Whatever quality calls to you right now, in this season of your life, and you don't overthink it. You don't wonder if you picked the right one. There is no right one. You just pick something that resonates, something that feels true to who you sense you're becoming. And here's something important. You don't pick a quality you completely lack. You pick a quality that already exists in you, even if it's tiny, even if it's mostly dormant. Because remember, you're not creating something from nothing. You're watering a seed. So pick something where you can find evidence, even the smallest evidence, that it's already there. Minute 4. The evidence scan. Now you scan your day just today, not yesterday, not last week, for any moment where that quality showed up. Any moment at all. And I mean any moment. It can be huge or microscopic. It can be something you did or something you felt, or even something you thought about doing. Let me give you examples. Let's say you chose patience. You scan your day. Maybe you noticed, I waited without complaining when the line was long at the shop. Or, I took a deep breath instead of snapping at someone. Or, I felt frustrated but I didn't act on it. Or, I read a difficult passage 3 times without giving up. Or even, I had a moment where I thought about being more patient, even if I didn't manage it. Any of that counts. Any of it. And when you find it, and you will find something, I promise you replay it. Not in your head like a memory, but in your body like a felt experience. You remember what it felt like to be patient in that moment. The calm in your chest, the steadiness of your breath, the sense of space and time. You don't analyze it. You don't congratulate yourself. You just feel it. You let your body remember, oh, this is what patience feels like. This is who I am when I'm patient. And then, and this is crucial, you amplify it. You imagine that feeling spreading, becoming more frequent, becoming more natural. You imagine waking up tomorrow, and that patience just being there. Available, easy. Not something you have to work for. Something you just are. Now, what if you scan your day, and you honestly can't find any evidence of your chosen quality? What if you picked courage, and you realize you were scared all day, and didn't do anything brave? Then you do one of 2 things. Either you look for a smaller version of the quality, maybe you didn't do anything brave, but you thought about being brave, or you wanted to be brave, or you admired someone else's bravery and you work with that. Or you skip the evidence scan for tonight and just go straight to imagination. You imagine what courage would feel like. You imagine a moment from today where you could have been brave, and you imagine yourself being brave in that moment. You feel how that would have felt, and you let your sleeping mind work with that. The key is, you're always finding something to water. You never go to sleep feeling like you failed, or like you don't have this quality at all. You always end on a note of possibility, of recognition, of, this is already in me. It just needs to grow. Minute 5. The imprint. This is the final minute, and often you'll drift into sleep during it, which is perfect. In this minute, you imagine tomorrow, but not in terms of events. Not, I have a meeting, then I need to go to the store, then I have to finish that project. Not that. Instead, you imagine moving through tomorrow from the perspective of someone who fully embodies your chosen quality. If you chose patience, you imagine yourself waking up as a patient person. You imagine facing the day's challenges with patience already there in your bones. You don't imagine specific situations. You just imagine the felt sense of being patient as you move through the day, the calm, the unhurried quality, the trust in timing. You stay in that feeling, you let it fill you, and you let yourself drift into sleep while holding that feeling, while being that person. This is the imprint. This is where you're giving your sleeping mind the blueprint. You're saying, this is who we're becoming. This is what we're building. And then you surrender to sleep and let the construction happen in the dark. That's it. That's the practice. 5 minutes. 5 simple steps. Physical settling. Release. Identity question. Evidence scan. Imprint. And then sleep. Now, let me give you some variations on this, because different people have different struggles at night, and the practice can be adapted. If you're very anxious at night, whose mind races with worries, here's what you do. You still follow the same structure, but in the imprint phase, instead of just imagining your chosen quality, you take your biggest worry and you imagine it resolving well, not denying the worry, not pretending it doesn't exist, but watching yourself handle it with grace, with your chosen quality. So if you're worried about a difficult conversation tomorrow, and you've chosen courage as your quality, you imagine yourself in that conversation, scared but brave. You imagine speaking your truth even though your voice shakes. You imagine the relief of having done it, regardless of the outcome. This gives your sleeping mind something to work with besides raw terror. It shows your mind, yes, this might be scary, but I can handle it. I have resources. I have courage. If you're someone dealing with resentment or anger, maybe someone hurt you today, maybe you're replaying it over and over, here's what you do. You use what I call the revision practice. You take the moment that angered you and you mentally replay it, but from the perspective of someone who chose your quality instead of anger. So if you choose peace, you replay the moment, but you imagine yourself responding with peace, not letting the other person off the hook necessarily, not pretending it didn't hurt, but seeing yourself choose peace anyway. Chosen not to carry this into tomorrow. Choose to respond differently than you did, and you feel the relief of that in your body, the lightness, the freedom. This isn't about the other person. This is about freeing yourself. And your sleeping mind can help you do that if you permit it. If you're someone who feels stuck or hopeless, who feels like nothing ever changes, here's what you do. You lower the bar dramatically. You don't reach for big character changes. You practice what I call tiny noticing. You scan your day not for evidence of some grand quality, but just for 3 tiny things that went even slightly right. The smallest things. The coffee was warm. You took a breath. Someone smiled at you. A bird sang. You didn't give up. You're still here. Build the muscle of noticing what's working, of finding the tiny seeds of good in your day. Your sleeping mind will amplify whatever you point it toward. If you point it toward despair, it amplifies despair. If you point it toward tiny glimmers of light, it amplifies those instead. Start so small that you can't fail. If you're someone chasing big goals, you're ambitious, you're driven, you want to achieve something significant, here's what you do. You stop visualizing the achievement before sleep. Stop imagining the prize. Stop imagining people applauding or money in the bank or your name in lights. Instead, you focus entirely on the character traits that would make you capable of that achievement. What kind of person achieves that goal? What qualities do they have? How do they feel in their body? Become that person first. Imagine being them, and let the achievement follow naturally. Because here's the truth. If you somehow got your goal without becoming the person who can sustain it, you'd lose it immediately. But if you become the person, the goal becomes inevitable. Now, let me troubleshoot some common problems. Because I know some of you are thinking, this sounds nice, Ben, but it won't work for me because my mind races too much. I can't calm down enough to do this. And I understand. I've been there. So here's what you do. Start the practice earlier. Don't wait until you're in bed trying to fall asleep. Do this practice 30 minutes before bed, or even an hour before, sitting up if you need to, with a light on, if that helps. Go through the 5 steps deliberately, fully, without rushing. And then let yourself do whatever you normally do before bed. And eventually, the practice will settle into the later hours, naturally. Another problem, I fall asleep too fast. I can't stay awake long enough to do this. And honestly, that's perfect. That's not a problem at all. The practice works better when you're drowsy. In fact, if you fall asleep in the middle of it, if you drift off while imagining your chosen quality, that's ideal. You've given your sleeping mind the last conscious direction, and now it's running with it. That's exactly what we want. Another problem: I forget to do it. I just collapse into bed and pass out, or I'm on my phone until the last second, and then I'm out. And yes, this is the most common problem. So here's what you do. Put a physical reminder by your bedside. I used to put my spectacles in a specific spot that I'd see right before I blew out the candle. Something that would catch your eye and remind you, oh right, the practice. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just something that breaks the automatic pattern of collapsing into sleep. And look, some nights you're going to forget. Some nights you're going to be too exhausted. Some nights, life is going to happen, and you're going to fall asleep watching something, or you're going to pass out before you remember. That's fine. This is not about perfection. This is about consistency. If you do this practice 4 nights a week, you're doing great. If you do it every night, amazing. If you miss a week because life got chaotic, just come back to it. The practice is forgiving. Your sleeping mind is patient. Now let me talk about what to expect, because expectations matter. If you expect immediate dramatic changes, you'll be disappointed. If you expect nothing and dismiss this as woo-woo nonsense, you'll miss the subtle shifts that are actually happening. Here's the realistic timeline. Week on, you're probably not going to notice anything except that you're building a new habit. You're training yourself to think about your character before sleep instead of just collapsing or scrolling NG or worrying. That's valuable in itself, but you're not going to wake up transformed. Be patient with the process. Week 2 or 3, you might start noticing that you wake up feeling slightly different, a little calmer, a little more centered, a little less reactive. It's subtle. You might not even be sure it's real. That's fine. It is real. Your sleeping mind is starting to reorganize around your chosen quality. Month 2. This is usually when other people start commenting. They'll say something like, "You seem different," or "You're more whatever your quality is lately." And you might not have even noticed the change yourself because it's been so gradual, so natural, but it's happening. The compound effect is kicking in. Month 6. You'll look back at who you were 6 months ago and barely recognize that person. Not because you achieved some big goal or had some dramatic transformation, but because you've become someone else. Someone who naturally embodies qualities that used to require enormous effort. But here's the key. This is not linear. Some weeks you'll feel like you're backsliding. Some days you'll think this isn't working at all. And then, suddenly you'll have a moment where you respond to something in a completely new way, and you'll realize, oh, I've changed. It happened while I wasn't looking. This is compound growth. It's exponential, not linear. The first month looks like nothing. The second month looks like barely anything. In the third month, you start seeing little hints. By month 6, it's undeniable. By a year, it's transformed your life. But you have to trust the process in the early stages when you can't see anything happening yet. And let me be very clear. This is not a quick fix. This is not a hack. This is not something you do for a week, and then you're done. This is a lifelong practice. I'm 79 years old, and I still do this every night. Some nights I'm too tired, and I just fall asleep. That's fine. But most nights, in those last drowsy minutes, I'm still consciously choosing what to print, still gently steering toward who I want to become, still watering seeds in the dark, because the alternative is letting your mind wander wherever it wants in those crucial minutes, letting it rehearse anxiety or replay failures or spiral into worry. And if you do that every night for years, you're building a very different person than if you use those minutes consciously. And here's something else I want you to understand about the long game. This practice has a social dimension that surprised me. When I first started doing this, I wanted to tell everyone. I was excited. I discovered something powerful, and I wanted to share it. So I'd mention it to people. And you know what happened? It didn't land. People would look at me like I was talking nonsense. Or they'd nod politely and clearly not take it seriously, or worst of all, they'd try it for one night and then say it didn't work. So I learned to keep quiet about it, at least at first. I'd just do the practice and let the changes speak for themselves. And then something interesting would happen. People would notice I was different. They'd ask, "What's changed? You seem calmer, more focused, more at peace." And then only then, I'd tell them what I was doing. And because they could see the results, they were much more likely to actually try it themselves. So my advice to you, don't announce this practice to everyone in your life. Don't turn it into a big deal. Just do it quietly. Let it work on you. Let the changes emerge naturally. And when people ask, and they will ask eventually, then you can share. Your example will be more convincing than any explanation. And, let me address something that might be bothering you. You might be thinking, this all sounds good, Ben, but isn't this just lying to yourself? If I'm not patient, and I imagine being patient Amantan, I just pretending I'm denying reality. And that's a fair question. That's the question I asked myself many times. So let me be very clear about what this practice is and what it isn't. This is not denial. This is not pretending you don't have flaws or challenges or real problems. This is not toxic positivity, where you just ignore anything negative and force yourself to think happy thoughts. That doesn't work, and it can actually be harmful. What this is selective attention. It's choosing what aspect of reality to focus on in that vulnerable pre-sleep state. And here's the thing about reality. It's complicated. You contain multitudes. You are many things at once. You are sometimes patient and sometimes impatient, sometimes brave and sometimes scared, sometimes generous and sometimes selfish. All of these are true. So, the question isn't, am I patient or not? The question is, which aspect of myself am I reinforcing? If I spend every night before sleep focusing on all the ways I was impatient today, feeling bad about it, resolving to do better, I'm reinforcing the impatient self. I'm printing that version of me deeper into my character. Not because I'm being realistic, because I'm being selectively realistic. I'm choosing to focus on one part of a complex truth. But if I spend those same minutes focusing on the moments I was patient, amplifying that version of myself, I'm reinforcing that instead. I'm still being realistic. Those patient moments really happened, but I'm choosing what to water. I'm choosing what to grow. This isn't lying. This is gardening. You have many seeds in you. You can't grow all of them. You have to choose. And the pre-sleep practice is how you make that choice. You're saying, this seed, this quality, this version of myself, I want more of this, and your sleeping mind obliges. So no, you're not denying that you're sometimes impatient. You're just refusing to rehearse that impatience every night. You're refusing to make it your identity. You're choosing to identify with your potential instead of your patterns. And that's not delusion. That's wisdom. All right, we're getting near the end of our time together, and I want to make sure you leave with clarity. I want you to understand not just the practice, but the philosophy behind it, the worldview that makes this practice make sense. Here's what I've learned after decades of self-experimentation. You are not a fixed thing. You are not a finished product. You are a process. You are always becoming. Every moment of every day, you're either becoming more of who you want to be, or more of who you don't want to be. There is no standing still. There is no neutral. You're always moving in one direction or another. And the direction is determined not by your big dramatic choices, but by your small invisible ones. Not by what you do when everyone is watching, but by what you do when no one is watching. Not by your morning intentions, but by your evening habits. The person you are becoming is being built in the moments you're barely aware of, in the thoughts you think while falling asleep, in the feelings you carry into the dark. Most people are becoming by default. They're letting their minds wander wherever they wander at night. They're letting their fears and worries and resentments print themselves deep into their character. They're unconscious about the most important thing, who they're becoming. And then they wake up one day at 40 or 50 or 60, and they don't recognize themselves. They wonder how they became so anxious, so cynical, so tired, so far from who they meant to be. But you don't have to live that way. You can become by design instead of by default. You can use those 5 minutes before sleep to consciously steer, to gently, persistently, point yourself toward who you want to be. And the beautiful thing is, it's not hard. It doesn't require superhuman discipline. It doesn't require changing your whole life. It just requires 5 minutes and a willingness to try something different. And the changes that come from this practice, they're not surface changes. They're not like willpower, where you force yourself to act differently for a while and then snap back to your old patterns. These are foundational changes, character changes, the kind of changes that last because they're coming from the inside out, because you're literally becoming a different person, not just acting like one. I've lived a long life. I've achieved things I'm proud of, and made mistakes I regret. I've been successful, and I've failed. I've been loved, and I've been lonely. And through it all, the thing that has made the most difference, the thing that has given me the most leverage over my own life, is this simple practice. These 5 minutes before sleep. This is mental, persistent steering toward who I want to become. And I'm telling you this not because I want you to admire my life or think I have it all figured out. I don't. I'm still learning, still growing, still becoming. That's the point. You never arrive. You're always in process. And the question is, are you steering that process, or are you letting it drift? So tonight, when you lie down in bed, you have a choice. You can do what you've always done, scroll until you pass out, or replay your worries, or just collapse into unconsciousness, or you can try something different. You can take 5 minutes to consciously choose who you're becoming, to water a seed, to print a different pattern, to steer toward a different shore. It won't feel like much at first. It'll feel so small and gentle that you'll wonder if it's doing anything at all. But trust me, trust the process. Trust that small things compounded over time create enormous changes. Trust that your sleeping mind is listening and working, and building something new in the dark. You are not broken. You're not behind. You're not too old or too damaged or too far gone. You're just standing at a fork in the road, the same fork we all stand at every single night. One path leads to more of what you've always been. The other path leads to who you're becoming. And you choose that path not with some big dramatic decision, but with 5 quiet minutes in the dark. So here's my final gift to you. Here's the truth I want you to carry with you tonight. And every night after, you are already the person you're trying to become. That person is not somewhere in the future, waiting for you to achieve enough or improve enough or fix enough. That person is already inside you, right now, in seed form. You've already been that person in moments, even if only for seconds. You've already felt what it's like. You already know it's possible because you've already lived it, however briefly. All you're doing with this practice is giving that seed light and water, reminding your deeper self, this is who we are. This is our nature. This is what we're growing toward. And your deeper self believes you. It trusts you. It says, okay, yes, let's become that. And it starts the work while you sleep. So tonight, when you close your eyes, remember, you're not forcing anything. You're not fighting yourself. You're not trying to become someone you're not. You're just gently, lovingly reminding yourself of who you already are in your best moments. And you're asking your sleeping mind to make those best moments more frequent, more natural, more automatic. That's it. That's the whole practice. That's the secret I wish someone had told me when I was young. But you have it now. You have it tonight. And every night from now on, you get to choose. You get to print. You get to become. Sleep well, my friend. Sleep deliberately. Because what you do in those final 5 minutes before sleep, that's not the end of your day. That's the beginning of your future. That's where tomorrow's version of you is being built. That's where the life you've been dreaming of starts to become real. And if this conversation touched something in you, if something here felt true, I'd love to know. Leave a comment and tell me, what's the one quality you're going to focus on tonight? Just one word: peace, courage, joy, patience, whatever it is. I want to witness your choice. I want to see what you're building. And if this video gave you something valuable, help others find it by clicking that like button. Let the algorithm know this matters. And subscribe if you want to keep having these conversations with me. I have more to share. More experiments. More discoveries. More truth. But for now, this is enough. You have what you need. 5 minutes. One quality. The willingness to try. That's all it takes to start becoming who you're meant to be. I'll see you in the next one, friend. Until then, be gentle with yourself. Be patient with the process. Trust the compound effect of small things done consistently in the dark. And most of all, remember, you're not trying to become someone new. You're just learning to be more of who you already are in your finest moments. You're becoming. We all are. The only question is, in which direction? You get to choose that tonight. In the dark, in the quiet, in those last precious minutes before sleep takes you. Choose wisely. Choose gently. Choose from love, not from fear. And then surrender to sleep and let your deeper self do its work. The future you've been trying so hard to create, it starts tonight. In bed, eyes closed. In 5 minutes of gentle, deliberate becoming. That's the secret. That's the lever. That's the gift I'm giving you. But before I let you go, let me tell you one more story, because I think it might be the most important one. It's about a time when this practice saved me from myself, from a darkness I didn't even know I was creating. It was about 15 years after I'd started doing the evening practice regularly. I was in my early 50s, and I thought I had this whole thing figured out. I thought I'd mastered my mind. I was successful, respected, and building things that mattered. But there was this growing heaviness inside me that I couldn't quite name, a tiredness that sleep didn't fix, a cynicism that was creeping into everything I did. And I didn't connect it to my evening practice at first. I was still doing the practice, after all. Every night, 5 minutes, just like I'd trained myself to do. But something had shifted without me noticing. Instead of focusing on who I wanted to become, I'd started using those 5 minutes to solve problems, to plan, to strategize, to run through everything I needed to do the next day. I'd turned my sacred pre-sleep time into another productivity session. And the result? I was becoming someone I didn't like. Someone who treated life like a series of tasks to complete. Someone who had lost touch with joy, with curiosity, with the simple pleasure of being alive. I was efficient, productive, successful, and miserable. It took my grandson to wake me up. He was maybe 7 years old at the time, and he asked me one evening, "Grandfather, why do you always look so serious?" And that question hit me like cold water. Because I realized I'd forgotten what I was building for. I'd stopped watering the seeds of joy and wonder and presence. I'd been using my most powerful tool, these pre-sleep minutes, to make myself into a machine instead of a human being. So I changed it again. I went back to basics. I asked myself, who do I want to become? Not, what do I want to achieve? Not, what problems do I need to solve? But who? And the answer that came was simple. I want to be someone who still sees magic in ordinary things. Someone who can laugh. Someone present with the people I love. Someone who remembers that life is not just work and achievement and leaving a legacy. It's also wonder and play and tenderness. So that became my focus. Every night, I'd scan my day for moments of genuine presence, moments when I laughed, moments when I noticed something beautiful, moments when I connected with someone without thinking about what I needed from them. And I'd amplify those moments, feel them again, let them expand. And slowly, over weeks and months, I came back to life. The heaviness lifted, the cynicism softened. I started waking up curious again, started noticing birdsong and sunlight, and the way my wife smiled when she was reading, started being the kind of grandfather my grandson could play with instead of just learn from. That experience taught me something crucial. This practice is not just about becoming better in some abstract sense. It's about staying connected to your humanity, to what actually matters. Because it's very easy to use self-improvement as another form of running away, another way to avoid just being here, now, as you are, with all your beautiful imperfections. So as you do this practice, I want you to remember, you're not trying to optimize yourself. You're not trying to become some superhuman version who never struggles or fails or feels lost. You're trying to stay connected to the best parts of being human. The parts that can love and wonder and grow and change and forgive and begin again. And some nights, the best quality you can focus on isn't patience or courage or discipline. Some nights it's softness, playfulness, acceptance, the ability to just be. To not always be becoming something, but to sometimes just be exactly what you are right now. Because here's another paradox I've learned. The more you can accept yourself exactly as you are, the more you naturally change. But the more you reject yourself, the more you try to force yourself to be different through shame and criticism and harsh discipline, the more you stay stuck. Change comes from love, not from violence. And that's true of changing yourself too. So yes, use these 5 minutes to steer toward who you're becoming. But do it with tenderness, with patience, with the same kindness you'd show a child who's learning something new. Because that's what you are. You're learning, you're growing, you're becoming, and that process deserves gentleness, not harshness. Let me also tell you about the community dimension of this practice, because it matters more than you might think. When you change yourself through this evening work, you're not just changing yourself, you're changing everyone around you. Your peace affects their peace. Your patience creates space for their growth. Your presence invites their presence. You become like a tuning fork, and people around you start resonating at your frequency without even knowing why. I saw this happen in my own household. As I became calmer, more patient, more present through this practice, my wife became calmer too. Not because I was telling her to change, not because I was better than her, but because my energy shifted, the whole system shifted with it. Our conversations became easier. Our conflicts became less frequent and less intense. The whole atmosphere of our home changed because one person, me, was doing 5 minutes of inner work every night. And this happened in my work too. As I became more creative, more curious, and more willing to experiment through focusing on these qualities before sleep, the people who worked with me became more creative and experimental too. I didn't have to give speeches about innovation. I just had to embody it. And embodiment is contagious. So when you do this practice, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for everyone in your life, everyone who will interact with the version of you that you're becoming. Your children, if you have them, your partner, your friends, your coworkers, even strangers you pass on the street. They'll all receive the gift of who you're becoming, even if they never know about these 5 minutes before sleep that made it possible. And here's something else that's important. This practice changes how you experience failure. Because you will fail. You will have days when you're not patient, even though patience is what you've been focusing on. You will be scared even though you've been building courage. You will be unkind even though you've been watering kindness. That's inevitable. That's being human. But when you fail, and you will, you won't experience it the same way anymore. Because instead of thinking, I'm a failure, I'm terrible, I'll never change, you'll think, oh, interesting. I acted from my old pattern today, but I know I'm building a new pattern. I know who I'm becoming. This was just a momentary regression, not my identity. You'll have compassion for yourself. You'll recognize that change is not linear, that growth comes in spirals, that sometimes you have to revisit old patterns before you can finally release them. And instead of beating yourself up at night, instead of using your pre-sleep time to rehearse your failure, you'll use it to reconnect with who you're becoming. You'll find even one small moment where the new pattern showed up, and you'll water that instead. This is how self-compassion becomes real instead of just a nice idea. Not by forcing yourself to feel good about yourself, but by having a practice that lets you see yourself as a work in progress, as someone who's learning, as someone who's becoming, and that perspective changes everything. Now, let me address something that some of you might be wrestling with. You might be thinking, but Ben, what if I choose the wrong quality to focus on? What if I spend months building patience when what I really needed was courage? What if I waste time on the wrong thing? And I understand that worry. We want to get it right. We want to be efficient even with our inner growth. But here's what I've learned. There is no wrong quality, because all qualities are connected. When you build patience, you're also building presence and acceptance and trust. When you build courage, you're also building authenticity and strength and resilience. When you build kindness, you're also building awareness and connection and love. You're not building isolated traits. You're building a character. And character is holistic. It's all connected. So whatever you choose to focus on, you're moving in a good direction. You're steering toward your better self. And if, after a few months, you feel called to focus on a different quality, that's fine. That's perfect, actually. That means you're listening to what you need. That means you're staying responsive instead of rigid. I've cycled through different qualities throughout my life. Sometimes I focus on patience. Sometimes I'm on a creative role. Sometimes on courage. Sometimes on playfulness. Sometimes on wisdom. Each season of life called for something different, and that's natural. That's healthy. You're not trying to achieve some final perfect state. You're just trying to stay in conversation with who you're becoming, adjusting as needed, growing in the direction that feels most alive. And here's another thing that might surprise you. Sometimes the quality you need to focus on is not what you think it is. Sometimes you think you need more discipline, when what you really need is more self-compassion. Sometimes you think you need more courage when what you really need is more acceptance of your fear. Sometimes you think you need to be stronger when what you really need is permission to be soft. So, pay attention, listen to yourself, and be willing to be surprised by what emerges. Let the practice guide you instead of trying to control it. Let your deeper self show you what needs to be watered right now. Trust that you know, at some level deeper than thought, what you need to become next. Let me also talk about what happens over years and decades of this practice, because I think it's important to know the long view. After you've been doing this for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, something shifts. The practice becomes less about specific qualities and more about a general orientation toward growth. You become someone who's always gently steering, always consciously becoming, always in conversation with your deeper self about who you're growing into. And at that point, the practice becomes effortless. It's not something you have to remember to do. It's just what you do before sleep. Like breathing, like closing your eyes. It's woven into the fabric of who you are. And the person you've become, through this practice, patient, present, courageous, kind, whatever qualities you've been watering, that person is just who you are now. It's not something you're trying to be anymore, it's your nature. But even then, even after decades, the practice doesn't end. Because you never arrive at some final destination. There's always another layer of growth. Always another quality to develop. Always another way to become more fully yourself. And that's not a problem. That's the joy of it. That's what makes life interesting. You're always becoming. Always discovering new possibilities in yourself. Always growing toward the light like a plant that never stops reaching. And in your final years, and I'm in my final years now, so I can speak to this, the practice takes on a different meaning. It becomes less about achieving or accomplishing or becoming impressive, and more about becoming free, becoming at peace, becoming wise in the way that only comes from decades of paying attention, becoming someone who can face death without fear because you've learned to surrender every single night, because you've practiced letting go into the unknown 10,000 times. That's what this practice has given me in my old age. Not success or wealth or fame, though those came too, but freedom, peace, the ability to lie down at night and know I've lived well, the ability to let go of today completely and trust that tomorrow, if there is a tomorrow, will unfold exactly as it should, the ability to die well when my time comes, because I've been practicing that surrender every single night for decades, and that's available to you too. Though you're probably not thinking about death right now. But the peace I'm talking about, the freedom, the sense of having lived well that starts now, tonight, in those 5 minutes before sleep, that's where you learn to surrender. That's where you learn to trust. That's where you learn to let go of control and let your deeper self do its work. Let me tell you one more practical thing before we close, because I want you to succeed with this. I want this to work for you the way it's worked for me. And the biggest predictor of success is not talent or intelligence or having your life together. It's consistency. Showing up night after night, even when you don't feel like it, even when you're not sure it's working, even when life is chaotic. So here's my advice. Make it easy. Don't add a bunch of complicated steps. Don't try to make it perfect. Don't beat yourself up if you miss a night. Just make it so easy that you can't fail. 5 minutes. One quality. That's it. Lower the bar so far that even on your worst day, you can still do it. And link it to something you're already doing. Maybe it's right after you brush your teeth. Maybe it's as soon as you turn off the light. Maybe it's right after you set your alarm. Find something you already do every night and put this practice right after it. That's why it becomes automatic. That way, it becomes part of your routine without having to rely on willpower or memory. And on the nights when you really can't do the full 5 minutes because sometimes life happens, do 1 minute, do 30 seconds. Just ask yourself the identity question. Who do I want to be becoming? And hold that question as you drift off. That's enough. That's better than nothing. That's keeping the practice alive. Because the goal is not perfection. The goal is continuity. The goal is to never completely abandon this conversation with your deeper self about who you're becoming. Even if you only do it half-heartedly some nights, even if you fall asleep in the middle of it, even if you forget and remember at 3 a.m. and do a quick version, often all of that counts. All of that is you saying, I care about who I'm becoming. I'm steering, not drifting. I'm conscious, not automatic. And here's what I've noticed over the years. The nights when you least feel like doing this practice are often the nights when you need it most. The nights when you're exhausted and discouraged and just want to escape into sleep or distraction, those are the nights when 5 minutes of gentle steering can make the biggest difference. Because those are the nights when your mind is most likely to spiral into worry or rehearse failures or cement destructive patterns. Those are the nights when you're most vulnerable to printing the wrong thing. So on those nights, especially, please try. Please give yourself those 5 minutes. Not as one more thing you should do, not as another obligation, but as a gift. A gift to tomorrow's version of you who will wake up shaped by what you do tonight. A gift to your future self, who will be living with the consequences of what patterns you reinforce in the dark. And let me speak directly to those of you who are in pain right now. Those of you who are depressed or anxious or grieving or lost. Those of you who feel like you're barely holding on. I see you. I've been you. And I want you to know, this practice can work for you too. Maybe especially for you. Because when you're in that dark place, when everything feels hopeless, when you don't even know who you want to become because you've lost touch with any sense of possibility, that's when this gentle practice can be a lifeline. You don't have to reach for big changes. You don't have to suddenly become happy or healed or whole. You just have to find one tiny quality to water. Maybe it's just alive. Maybe it's just breathing. Maybe it's just here. You can spend those 5 minutes before sleep simply noticing that you made it through another day, that you're still here, that your heart is still beating, and you can feel a quiet gratitude for that. Or if you can't feel gratitude, you can just acknowledge it. You survived today. That counts. That's evidence of strength even if it doesn't feel like strength. And maybe tomorrow, or next week, or next month, you'll be able to reach for something more. But for now, just, I'm here. I'm still here. I'm becoming someone who can survive this. And that's enough. That's more than enough. Because this practice works at whatever level you're at. It meets you where you are. It doesn't demand that you be anywhere other than where you actually are. It just asks, from here, where do you want to gently steer? And sometimes the answer is just, toward tomorrow, toward another breath, toward surviving one more day. And that's beautiful. That's sacred. That's you using your last conscious moments to choose life, to choose to keep going, to choose to keep becoming even when becoming feels impossible. So please, wherever you are, whatever you're going through, try this tonight. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes of being intentional about who you're becoming instead of letting it happen by default. And who knows, maybe 5 years from now, you'll look back at tonight as the night everything changed. Not because something dramatic happened. Not because you had some big breakthrough, but because this was the night you started steering. This was the night you started using your mind's most powerful window for change instead of letting it run wild. This was the night you became conscious about your becoming. That's my hope for you. That's my wish. That you'll take this seriously enough to actually try it, but lightly enough that you don't turn it into another burden. That you'll be consistent enough to let it work, but gentle enough with yourself when you're not perfect. That you'll trust the process even when you can't see results yet, but stay curious and willing to adjust as you learn what works for you. You have everything you need. You have a mind that's rebuilding itself, even whether you're aware of it or not. You have 5 minutes before sleep that are currently being wasted or used destructively. You have a deep desire to become someone maybe you can't even articulate who, but you feel it. And now, you have a method. A simple, gentle, powerful method that actually works with how your mind operates instead of fighting against it. So take it, use it, make it yours. Adapt it to fit your life, your personality, your needs. And then watch what happens. Watch how you start to change from the inside out. Watch how the person you're becoming starts to emerge naturally, effortlessly, inevitably. Watch how life starts to feel different when you're no longer at war with yourself, when you're no longer trying to force change, when you're just gently, consistently steering toward who you're meant to be. This is the gift I'm giving you. This is what I learned through 50 years of experimentation and observation and failure and success. This is the thing I wish someone had told me when I was young, so I'm telling you now. And I'm trusting that you'll take it seriously. That you'll actually try it, not just think about trying it. That you'll give it enough time to work. That you'll be patient with yourself in the process. Because you deserve to become who you're capable of becoming. You deserve to live a life that feels aligned with your deepest values and truest self. You deserve to wake up each day feeling like you're moving in the right direction, even if it's slowly. You deserve to experience the peace and freedom that come from knowing you're not drifting aimlessly, but steering consciously towards something meaningful. And all of that starts tonight, in your bed, in the dark, in 5 minutes that nobody else will see or know about. 5 minutes between you and your deeper self. 5 minutes that will compound into a completely different life if you let them. So I'm going to leave you now with one final thought, one final blessing, one final encouragement. Tonight, when you lie down, when you close your eyes, when you feel yourself starting to drift toward sleep, remember this conversation. Remember that you have a choice. Remember that these moments matter more than almost any other moments in your day. And remember that you're not alone in this. Millions of people throughout history have used the pre-sleep state for transformation, even if they didn't have the words for it. You're joining a long lineage of conscious becomers. And I'm with you in spirit, cheering you on. Be kind to yourself. Be patient with the process. Trust that small things done consistently create miracles. And know that who you're becoming is already inside you, waiting to be watered, waiting to grow, waiting to emerge into the light. Sleep well tonight, my dear friend. Sleep deliberately, sleep with intention, and wake up tomorrow as someone who's one night closer to who they're meant to be. The practice is yours now. Use it well, use it wisely, use it with love, and watch your life transform from the inside out, one gentle evening at a time. Until we meet again, be well, be whole, and be always becoming. And you know, as I'm sitting here finishing this conversation with you, I'm struck by something. I'm struck by the intimacy of what we've just shared. You and me, talking about the most private moments of your day. The moments when you're alone with yourself, vulnerable, undefended. The moments when nobody's watching and nobody knows what you're thinking or feeling or becoming. There's something sacred about those moments. Something that deserves protection and reverence. Because in a world that's constantly demanding your attention, constantly asking you to perform and produce and prove yourself, those 5 minutes before sleep might be the only time all day when you're truly alone with yourself, when you can drop all the masks and just be. And what I'm suggesting is that you use those moments not to escape yourself, but to come home to yourself. Not to rehearse your failures or worry about tomorrow, but to gently remember who you're becoming. To whisper to your deeper self, this is who we are. This is where we're going. This is what we're building together. That's an act of love. That's you loving yourself enough to guide yourself instead of abandoning yourself. That's you being the wise elder to your own becoming, saying, I see you. I believe in you. I know who you're growing into. Let me help you get there. And maybe that's what this whole practice is really about. Not self-improvement in the way we usually think of it, not trying to fix yourself because you're broken, not trying to become impressive so others will love you, not trying to achieve some impossible standard of perfection, but simply learning to be your own loving guide, learning to parent yourself with tenderness, learning to steer your own becoming with the same gentle wisdom you'd use with someone you deeply loved. Because you are someone you should deeply love. You are someone worth guiding with care and patience. And faith. You are someone whose becoming matters, whose growth matters, whose wholeness matters, and you don't need to wait for someone else to see that in you or believe that about you. You can be that for yourself. Starting tonight, in those 5 minutes before sleep, that's the real transformation this practice offers. Not just becoming more patient or more courageous or more creative, though you will become those things, but becoming someone who knows how to love themselves through the process of becoming. Someone who knows how to be gentle with their own growth. Someone who knows how to guide without forcing, to steer without controlling, to care without demanding perfection. And that changes everything. That changes how you move through the world. That changes how you relate to other people. That changes how you handle failure and success. That changes how you face uncertainty and change. Because when you know how to love yourself through your own becoming, you're no longer desperately seeking that love from outside. You're no longer performing for approval. You're no longer afraid of being seen as imperfect because you've made peace with your imperfection. You're just becoming, openly, honestly, courageously. And people feel that in you. They feel the freedom you carry. They feel the peace you've made with yourself. They feel the gentleness you've learned to give yourself. And it teaches them that maybe they could be gentle with themselves too. Your inner work becomes a gift to everyone around you. Even though it happens in private, even though it happens in the dark, even though nobody sees those 5 minutes before sleep that made it all possible. So thank you. Thank you for listening to an old man share what he's learned about the evening mind and the sleeping self, and the power of those final moments before consciousness dissolves. Thank you for being willing to try something that might seem strange or simple or too easy to work with. Thank you for caring about who you're becoming. Thank you for being here, in this moment, open to transformation. The world needs who you're becoming. It needs your patience, your courage, your creativity, your kindness, your wisdom, and your unique flavor of humanness. It needs you to become more fully yourself, not because you're lacking, but because your fullness is a gift. And you're building that gift every night, in the dark, in those 5 precious minutes before sleep. So go forth with this knowledge. Go forth with this practice. Go forth with the confidence that you now know something that most people never discover, that you have enormous power over who you're becoming, and that power is most accessible in the moments when you feel most powerless. The sleeping mind is not your enemy but your ally. That change doesn't have to be hard, that you don't have to fight yourself, that you can become who you're meant to be simply by gently, consistently, lovingly steering yourself in that direction every single night. I believe in you. I believe in your capacity for change. I believe in your deeper wisdom that already knows who you're becoming. I believe that tonight, when you lie down and close your eyes, you'll remember this conversation and you'll try something different. And I believe that small choice will ripple forward into your future in ways you can't even imagine yet. So sleep well, dear friend. Sleep with intention. Sleep with hope. Sleep with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're not drifting anymore, you're becoming. Deliberately, consciously, beautifully. And may your becoming be everything you dream of and more than you dare to imagine. May you wake each day a little closer to your truest self. May you move through life with increasing peace and decreasing fear. May you discover that change is not a burden but a gift. And may you carry this practice with you all your days. A secret anchor, a hidden source of transformation, a gentle light guiding you home to yourself, night after night after night. This is my blessing for you. This is my hope for you. This is my gift to you. Take it, use it, become.